Tom Quee presents The Royal Ramble, an episode-by-episode celebration of the classic British sitcom, The Royal Family. To get in touch with the show, email us at theroyalramblepod@gmail.com. Hey everyone, it's Tom here, back again with another edition of The Royal Ramble, another edition, in fact, of Blur and Mrs. Merton. And yet we're discussing every episode of the Mrs. Merton show, and this is still very, very early. This episode we're discussing today, in fact, came out on the 17th of February, 1995, when I was still 2 back then, and I think my guest was a little bit older, and we'll get to that in a second. Just before we get to the guest and the whole topic, of course, if you enjoy the show, you can support us by subscribing on wherever you listen, on Spotify and iTunes, on YouTube. Get in touch with me as well, theroyalramblepod@gmail.com, if you want to come on and discuss a Merton episode as well, and we'll talk about the Royal Family, and we'll talk about, all the sort of glorious 90s-ness of it. And yeah, get in touch with me there. That's theroyalramblepod@gmail.com. The Patreon is also available, so over there exclusively we have our Early Doors series. So currently at the time of this being uploaded, the first episode of series 2 is actually out when Dino comes in after Liam, and we see the first proper blossomings of Ken and Tanya's relationship, the will they won't they tug of war there. So yeah, the 7 episodes of the Grapes tape, so I think it's like 9-10 hours of Early Doors criticism. So if you want to support the show, you can go over there, and the Patreon link is there. But yes, clearly, maybe if you've listened to this show and gleaned my past histories, I think it's clear that I'm obsessed with podcasting. This is my 6th podcast, I think. I just keep making them, None of them are listened to very widely, but I keep making them. I love the form. And, one of my early masterpieces was Alpha Metallica. I did a Metallica podcast where I went through every single Metallica song in alphabetical order with fans from around the world. And it was nice doing it because often you would have people on and you would have them on multiple times because you always had really good conversations. This guy, I believe, was on 5 tracks that we covered back then, and now we're covering Mrs. Merton show for some reason. But John, happy to talk to you. How are you?
I'm good, Tom. It's nice to be back in this vein with you, albeit not Metallica.
No, not in a thrash metal world.
No,
we're in a suitably different world. So you and Mrs. Merton, is there any history there? Do you remember this being on TV?
I do. I was thinking about this last weekend when I was watching the episode, and I was familiar with the show. I think more familiar with the sort of the clips, the sort of famous ones, the Paul Daniels ones, etc. Mm-hmm. But for me, I think I discovered Caroline Aherne a little bit later during the Fast Show stuff. She was in the comedy sketch show called The Fast Show. So she sort of
Scorchio and all that,
and the couple, the old couple as well.
Oh yes, with John Thompson.
Yeah. But when the intro music started the episode, now bear in mind I've not watched one of these episodes in 30 years. I was immediately like, I remember this. I remember the opening credits. So yeah, it was sort of lodged in my brain, even though I didn't know it was there, I guess.
We mentioned this in the past episode with Fergal. Banger of a theme song, right?
Oh yeah, classic. And I mean, it really sort of sets up the premise as well, because it's a very, northern terraced houses, very particular to sort of mining communities or mill communities.
For real.
And they're all grey-haired old people. You get the sense of what's coming right from the opening brass band.
Yeah, because it is a super wacky concept. And it's not just a fake chat show, but, it's a fake elderly matron, as you're saying, and the whole audience and the interaction with the audience and the whole world, that she conjures there. So as I said at the top, this was the 17th of February, 1995, this came out. Just a little bit of research, John, just a little bit of context. The UK box office top 10 that week, actually.
Okay.
So Stargate was number 10. Roland Emmerich's Stargate classic.
Never seen it.
No. I've only seen it, actually. I've not seen the TV show.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of SG-1 heads out there, but, my respect to them. Shallow Grave, Danny Ball's Shallow Grave is also there. Great movie. Interview with a Vampire Leon, Shawshank Redemption. It was an era back then. It was...
Yeah.
And number 1, the lesser known, I love the title of it. It's Walt Disney Presents Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book. I don't know if you're familiar with that adaptation.
That's not the cartoon one.
No, this is a live action one, yeah. Stephen Sommers directed it. but apparently has
Never
very
seen it.
little to do with Jungle Book. So it's like Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sunday Times said the film has so little connection to the classic, the title is beyond explanation.
2 thumbs down. Yeah.
I actually quite liked it. He did actually quite like it in the whole, but yeah. So that was happening. Also, I just searched. I was just interested. I was February 1995, England. Was there any big news stories going down? It was mostly football news. I don't know if you recall this. Like, this was news to me. The Lansdowne Road football riot, which was actually a game in the Republic of Ireland that was called off. Yeah, called off to a lot of fan violence. And also, Eric Cantona was charged with common assault in this month. He doing the Kung Fu kick the month before at Crystal Palace. So, enough of that. Enough of our surrounding information. Let's get into the episode. And I guess more generally, I know obviously you don't watch this show often. I didn't really watch it before doing this podcast. Like, Carolyn Ahern's performance as Mrs. Merton and the whole sort of Mrs. Merton artifice and conceit, like, what do you make of that?
So I think a brilliant, essentially, I think, is the TLDR version. I think using the I'm an old woman character is incredibly disarming. You sort of expect a certain character, a certain attitude, and then she really subverts that, but in a way that isn't confrontational. It's done very much under the guise of this old lady. It's not like the Catherine Tate character of Nan, which is in a similar vein, which is like take an old person, but then make their thoughts and their concepts and their words younger or modern or whatever. It's very genteel. It's very, it feels very northern. It feels like of that time there was that whole, Steve Coogan, John Thompson, all of that sort of set. It feels very much, you couldn't have done it, I think, if she was a Cockney.
Yeah.
Or Cornish, I think there was a certain...
Cornish, I like that.
You never know. I think, so I think it was actually, it allows her to disarm her guests, and then she can just slip in those very barbed sort of questions and jabs and comments.
Yeah, I mean, what stuck out to me on this episode, and it's most episodes really, she insults the guests a lot, like in a funny way, but she has a lot of digs at Ken Livingstone, we'll get to, like, relentless.
It's a piece of brilliance. I mean, she was only, I think, in her mid-20s, when she was doing it. So it's really quite a clever conceit because and especially as well, the whole setup, with the sofas, the couch, the fact that the audience is essentially a sea of grey hair and beige jackets. It's very much, and obviously they wouldn't have known because these were all filmed before they went out. So these guests were turning up and they'd have no idea what they were getting, what to expect, and then here's this little old lady, and then suddenly they're asking them questions about back passages and things.
Well, indeed, and and you mentioned the audience there, and it begins with her at the top of the stair. On the face of it, it is just traditional chat show, and I'm sure a lot of Kilroy and a lot of Trisha does have a lot of sea of old people in there, so it's not too incongruous. But you see her walk around the top of the audience and like pats this young lad and says hello to him and like shakes hand with someone else, and it's like, the more and more you watch these episodes, John, like the audience is such a living thing and they all have their own mythologies. Ada and all these people, like.
And there's one's not Roy. Who's the guy that she goes to about the stories? I forget his name.
Oh yeah. There's Roy,
the one at the end. But they're all. But as you say, they're all real people. And as far as I'm aware, I watched a documentary about her afterwards. I sort of went off into Carolina Ahernland. But as far as I'm aware, they were all genuine people. None of that was scripted. So that, again, that's her shows, and something she shows throughout as well is her ability to just work with what she's given and to be so quick and so witty, off the cuff. I think that's a real testament to her skills and ability.
No, you're right, and I'm pretty sure they weren't stooges. I think they had a few that were in the audience if they wanted to. I think Craig Cash said this on the podcast, if they wanted to push things into a certain direction. But all the old people, it's even like their delivery as well. It just feels so real and so human. Sometimes they like stumble on their words, or they're not quite mic'd up. Like they just come very conversational, and it stands in stark contrast, I guess, to the very manicured, if willing to take a barb celebrities, but the juxtaposition of those two worlds. She seems to revel in Carolyn Ahern. She always wants to get them interacting.
Yeah, and I think there's a sort of an almost over the garden fence, over the back wall quality to the show, in as much as that it doesn't feel like, yes, it's in a studio and you've got an audience and you've got Peter Hook on bass, but it's very much like so she's on her way round and she stopped and she's having a conversation and then she moves on, very much in that street that you see in the opening credits.
Yes, yes, definitely. And as she's saying hello to everyone, she does say hello to the band as well, Hooky and the boys. Which, I mean, we both share a passion for heavier, anthemic, melodic rock music, of this ilk. It's pretty fascinating, isn't it, that this is the house band? It's a good choice.
Well, I also noticed in the credits she was listed as Caroline Hook.
Indeed, yeah.
So I guess she roped the husband in to
pretty much
to play. But yeah, I mean it feels it feels very much of its time, but not in a bad way. Like the house band is northern, she's northern. The whole circle that of that time of comedy, there was a real breakthrough with northern, and particularly Manchester-based comedians. Dave Gorman is one of the writers on the show.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He's from not North, but Staffordshire. So it's sort of it's very much I think it wouldn't have worked, as I said, if it was Southerners or but
Yeah.
it's genius.
Hello, I'm Mrs. Merton and welcome to the show. You've worked all week for a pittance. It's Friday night. What do you want to see on TV? Yes, celebrities with loads more money than you having a great time on my show. Well, I know you won't be disappointed because we've got the most popular actor in the world. Yes, Girly Watts from Coronation Street. We've got more glamour than you can poke a stick at in the shape of Mandy Smith. And of course, we've got some musical accompaniment from Hooky and the boys.
But yeah, we get the intro. She says, she welcomes everyone, says it's Friday night, you've been working all week for a tuppence. What do you want to see? Celebrities with loads more money than you having a great time.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's funny to think that this was on Friday night, right, as well. Like, obviously, it's done as a tea time thing, but it was, like, later on the Beeb.
Yeah, I actually meant to look up when it was shown, but it does have, again, it's all part of the whole artifice, the cozy, the floral dresses, the pastel sofas, but underneath it there's lots of barbs, there's lots of sharp wit, and it also feels as well that she's using this artifice, this construct, to sort of throw society back at you. The whole sort of working class and upper
definitely.
class and, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And she does a little bit more of the intro as well. Says they have the most popular actor in the world, Curly Watts from Curry. from Curry. We'll get to Kevin Kennedy there. And Mandy Smith as well. And I like her comment as well when Hooky and the boys play a little thing. And she's like, something for the rowdy youth element there, she says.
Yeah, playing the most unrowdy youth-orientated song on earth.
Yeah. We learn a lot about Mrs. Merton throughout the Mrs. Merton show. Obviously, a lot about her history, and there is a sitcom. I don't know if you're aware, Mrs. Merton and Malcolm. Have you heard of this?
Maybe.
Yeah. So
Maybe.
Basically, after they did this whole run, and I think in between series 1 and 2 of the Royal Family, they did like a God honest sort of absurd sitcom that followed Mrs. Merton and her son Malcolm. So I think a lot of what they say in this show isn't necessarily canon to that, because she mentions her husband later on as well. But she mentions having her womb removed is what I'm getting to.
Right.
And she doesn't want the audience to ruminate on that when they look at the face of the next guest. And it's Ken Livingstone, who is the first guest here. Now, for me personally, Ken Livingstone, I knew him as the mayor of London. Like, that's just how I, encountered him, and like the GLC stuff before. And obviously he was a kind of Corbyn before Corbyn or around that time in a certain way. What's your relationship with Ken Livingstone?
It's sort of the same thing, really. I mean, he was certainly, when I was growing up, when I was a teen and started to become sort of a bit more socially conscious, he sort of very much represented a specific style of politics. How can you put this in today's modern parlance without being divisive? There seemed to be much more definitive lines between the political parties in the 80s, certainly through to the mid-90s, up until New Labour. So he was very much, the poster boy for left-leaning socialist, that kind of thing. So it was interesting to look back and see his appearance on this as sort of, I guess, like the precursor to what the Blair era ushered in, which is this eye on actually using the medium of entertainment and not just doing Newsnight and Question Time and those sorts of things, and trying to reach a different type of audience. I mean, I think he kind of got the gag from, I think, maybe
Yeah.
about 30 seconds in, because he wasn't really trying to push politics or policy, and the whole swim with the newts thing and all of that stuff. So I think he was really quite game to go along with it. So it was really fascinating to see that early adoption of politics in the entertainment sphere.
Yeah, he is quite likable in this because he does roll with it, and she does give him what, and I think Red Ken, as he was known, which again they make a little joke on later, and obviously the GLC, which was kind of like a council within a council, right? It was like its own fiefdom in London that he ran, and it was incredibly progressive, and I think he tried to half bus fares and then they got doubled again, and there's all this sort of stuff. But he'd been around a while, for the whole 80s. He was this figure, and this is like almost 15 years beyond that at this point.
Politics. Is it all a load of rubbish?
I think so, largely, yes. It's street theatre. Sometimes when I'm in Parliament, you can't hear what's going on. Everyone's screaming round you. You have to watch it on television to find out what happened,
Really?
Yeah.
It sounds like great fun. But when did you realise first that you were a politician?
But yeah, the politics, is it a load of old rubbish, is what she asks. That's the first thing. And he says yes. He says it's street theatre.
Yeah. Which it is. I mean, it's remarkably prescient, going back as as we're saying, 30 years, and you look at it now, and you've got, global leaders, TikToks and all this sort of them. I don't want to sound like old man yells at clouds, but it's incredibly prescient when he talks about theatrics, because especially with, America and things like that, it is very much about the public presentation, the message, the visual, rather than how does that translate into policy, and how does that affect me,
Yes. And Blair then gets mentioned. You brought up Blair.
Yeah.
Blair then gets mentioned, which is just super interesting. Obviously, it leads to a joke, but it's just where we were at this point. And obviously, Blair gets elected in the landslide in 97, but this is like 2 years before that. Yeah. But obviously, it's not, it's classic Mrs. Merton, right? She means Lionel Blair. He's talking about Tony Blair. She means Lionel.
It's very, all the way through, there's very gentle humour, very... I don't know, like end of the pier, working men's clubs,
Absolutely.
that kind of, that sort of double entendre, the spoonerisms, that kind of thing. It's all there. And then alongside that, you've got very pointed, political jabs or status things, or, that kind of thing. So it's really interesting to see that it was, I suppose, a sort of ahead of its time. In many senses,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there are these kind of improvisational bits that happen where you're like, okay, she's coming up with a joke here. And then there's stuff where you're like, okay, this was probably just written, right? And they just did that. Where she talks about, she encourages people, Mrs. Merton, to contact their local MP, to have a good relationship with the local MP, and then tells a little story about a stool being stuck in a back passage. And it was a big job, and sleeves got rolled up and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's just, I mean, it's right there, right? It's great, but it is just kind of, this it works.
That's an excellent sort of litmus test for whether you want to be friends with someone. If you play them that section and they laugh, you're probably on good ground. If they don't find that kind of double entendre funny, then we'll probably just talk about books or something, But
again, she does ground it though, saying, because they have a nice back and forth, saying, asking if he'd rather be leader of the Labour Party or Prime Minister. And, just kind of like a gentler joke than a back passage joke, one that lands softer but still lands.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it's that sort of that jab that, do you want to be one or the other, neither of which you'll ever be at that time, I guess the idea was. Yeah. But again, he's very good at bringing it back and sort of saying, slipping a bit of politics in there, if you like, that he, references the distaste for the current, the Tory government at the time. And, so there is still some, and she lets him do that as well. And she doesn't sort of, there's no ad lib, there's no barb to that, so I think it's admirable as well that she lets that kind of, that platform go. And she lets that sort of sit there for a bit, because I guess...
Mrs. Merton is a Labour supporter, I guess.
Yes, that's where I was going to go.
Yeah.
I said, I mean, the character certainly. I don't want to enforce stereotypes, but if you look at the background that's being portrayed and the
Yeah.
geographical location, you would naturally assume it's a neighbour.
You would. And an interesting thing about Ken Livingstone here that I feel like going forward in my life, John, if Ken Livingstone ever gets brought up in any conversation, I have this interesting fact in my back pocket because I did find this intriguing. The man loves newts.
Yes,
He's
very
a passionate,
much so.
I don't know what the word is, and I love it. He loves the outdoors. He's an orienteer, but ever since a young boy, he's loved catching newts.
But you have some unusual pets, don't you, Ken?
Oh, yeah, my newts.
Your newts. Tell us about them.
Well, I built these 2 big ponds in the garden. I mean, because Kinnock would never give me a job, I had enough time to do the garden.
Yes.
It's quite nice, actually. And the thing is, I never use any chemicals in the garden.
No.
So all the sort of slugs and that multiplied, but then all the frogs come and eat them. Now it's in perfect... We hardly ever see a slug. I mean, all these places crawling frogs, toads, newts. A slug comes by, they fight over it, and chop it all up, and it's delicious.
I'm worried about you.
Considering some of the other stuff that went on in politics in the early 90s, I think catching newts is probably probably, if a lot more of them caught newts, there would be, less problems in the world.
Well, and that leads. I mean, there's a lot of good newt material actually, but I really like the line that. Because he says that he's got 2 ponds in his back garden and that sort of stuff. But she asks if the slimy reptiles take his mind off work.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I don't know. With most traditional chat shows, you have like a pre-interview research call, right? One of the production team. Have you got anything funny? When was the last time you fell out of bed or whatever?
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like that happened there. So that joke, I feel, was made up right on the spot, and the dexterity, the versatility to be able to go, I'll make this joke, and not only will it be funny, but the double meaning will also land. So there's, to get that in the moment is just absolutely brilliant, I think.
No, she's adept at this, and Karen had been doing the Mrs. Merton character for quite a while at this point, so she was just super sharp and on her feet. But yeah, it then gets opened up to the general public. He's quite harmless, Mrs. Merton said. He's a bit dotty. And I love dotty. I feel dotty is such a grand word. Yeah. So, we have this young lady in the front who does stand out a bit because obviously she's not 70 odd. And she asks, will Labour ever get back into power? And he mentions what you were just saying before. He says he's never known a government so despised, which is prescient as well.
Yeah, and true.
Yeah.
I mean, that at that point in time, there were so many things coming out of the 80s and all of that stuff. We won't want to bore people, but the sort of the Thatcher years and the proliferation of that's really where the culture of self started, and the loss of community and all the sorts of things. And then there was all the scandals with the Tory Tory ministers in the early 90s, John Major and Edwina Curry and blah, blah, blah.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So, I think poll tax, that coming in, and then the what was it called? I can't remember but there was a ruling about, I think something to do with gay marriage or something along those lines, and so it was building and building and building. So then, obviously, as you say, in '97. That's why we had the landslide. So
yes, and it's just interesting again. It's in the air. It seems to be like he seems confident and she's curious. So and again, we have these nice moments. I love all of these sections in the interviews, John, where Mrs. Merton at the end just turns to the audience and we just get some interesting questions.
Yeah. I think the inclusion of the audience is brilliant because it makes it feel less of a chat show, more like a sort of a church hall, community cafe, whatever. But also then you've got these celebrities who literally have no idea what these genuine members of the public are going to ask.
Yes.
And in there is the potential, the spark for something amazing to happen, because you never know what some random member of the public is going to say to, a politician in an unfiltered way. They're not there for question time with their pre-prepared, card or whatever. It's like, it's Jack from 78 from Lancashire who wants to ask about, table legs or whatever. It's really fascinating.
And there is there's a thread that seems to run through these episodes, and I've not seen them all, I'm not too familiar with them all, but as I'm going through, I'm noting this down. And in the last episode, Mrs. Merton spoke to Chris Greener, who was then UK's tallest man, and she asked him about why are baboons' bottoms red. And now she asks Ken about that as well, who gives, he gives an honest answer about mating habits and stuff. And this is another common thing. We see this in this episode, indeed, where things get a little too haughty-taughty, and Mrs. Merton is like, no more of that now. No, she shuts it down.
Yeah, she's, again, that the character allows her to be, purient, and allows her to be the Mrs. White, the
White House,
the Mary
Whitehouse
character, and sort of say, well, have enough of that, So it's okay when she's, and again, when she's doing the double entendre and she's referencing back passages, that's fine, because she's literally just talking about a back passage, wink, wink. But if somebody else brings it, but it's a really, again, interesting sort of dichotomy going on there.
No, it's very like, no sex, please, we're Northern. It's that sort of, that idea. But so yes, our next guest, fascinating guest here, actually. So we have Mandy Smith, who is but 24 at the time. And I will say she's probably one of those Mrs. Merton guests that's kind of fell to time, really. Obviously, she's quite infamous for something she was no fault of her own. But yes, so she, since divorced now, but she was married to Bill Wyman. People may remember this story, the Rolling Stones bassist. He was 47 at the time. He wrote in his 1990 biography, quote, "She took my breath away. She was a woman at 13," which is... How did an editor say yes to that? I don't know. But the relationship only became public 2.5 years later, when she reached the age of 16, and there was obviously a firestorm of publicity there. They did marry, and then they broke up soon after, and she won a settlement. And he was in the Stones the entire time. Like, it wasn't like he was not in the Rolling Stones. Like, it's a really ugly story, this, isn't it, in music history?
It's, I mean, the thing is that I wrote down here, it's a bit uncomfortable through the 2025 prism.
Yeah.
But clearly it was problematic then as well, because that's what she was getting at, I mean, she didn't go into it too much, and I think she sort of recognized that, you want to get your money's worth, and you want to get, it is an entertainment show, it's not an investigative journalism show. But she did sort of stray into that, and it is odd, not odd, it is kind of when you watch that back now and you go, I mean, at the time there were almost certainly people going, oh, but it was never, you'd be publicly castigated and thrown down a well if you did that now, rightly so. And throughout history, there's all these stories of rock and roll, Jerry Lee Lewis, Anthony Kiedis, Steven Tyler, all these people. So it is kind of a bit so I like the fact that she acknowledged it. I think it was important, and it's great that she did that, but she didn't dwell on it, didn't make too light of it. And then sort of it was just an acknowledgement of, like, there's this thing in the room, we're going to talk about it briefly, and then we'll move on to what is it that you actually do, that kind of thing.
Well, it's funny actually, but the what is it you actually do is before that. So she comes on, and then again, it's like, I love how Ken Livingstone's there, and initially he's sitting a bit further away, and then he does kind of sidle up or whatever. He's being dignified, he's being a gentleman. But Mrs. Merton is still able to get some snipes in here. She says to Ken as she comes in, very lovely Mandy Smith here, says, "That's what I like about you, Ken. You knew a beautiful lady was coming on, and you didn't make any effort." and then he asks her the same. Mrs. Merton asks her the same question that he asked Ken before: "What would you do if you weren't doing what you do?" But then she sort of stops herself. She's like, "What do you do?" Like, it's just the kind of. It seems like whenever a guest comes on, Mrs. Merton never actually knows what they're actually famous for.
Yeah, which is brilliant, because again, you get the person to define themselves, which is, I suppose, is interesting in one sense, because you get maybe a little peek, media training aside, although that wasn't a concept then, but you get an idea of how perhaps they view themselves, and also how they present themselves in the environment that they're in. I think that's again a brilliant piece of almost journalism.
And she goes back to the past then. She does say, by the way, I should say, Mandy Smith says she does TV presenting, singing, modelling. Whatever she does is how she characterises it. But Mrs. Merton says she goes back to, tell me about your relationship with the elderly. And she seems like she's going to say elderly gentleman. She says elderly, gent, Bill Wyman. And, Mandy does look pensive off into the distance here. She laughs, but it's obviously sore.
But tell me about your relationship with the elderly gent, Bill Wyman.
I suppose I could talk to you really, because you'd relate, wouldn't you, being that sort of age? So.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was a big fan of his when I was a girl.
Really?
Yes. So
I
was my
wouldn't
mother.
remember. I suppose it was more like, it just, from the age, I skipped an age from 11 to 13. I sort of skipped that age. And I went from being 11, 12 to 18.
Yes.
And that's how I wanted. Obviously, it's not right, but that's exactly what happened. So I sort of missed out that chunk of years.
But she does say something funny off the bat, Mandy, which impressed me really, where she says, I can probably speak to you, Mrs. Merton, about this, you know, and Mrs. Merton said she and her mother were big fans of the Rolling Stones back in the day.
Yeah, again, just brilliant. Just a throwaway line, just a little thing, just to say, you know, again, the man you married, incredibly, you know, was that highlight of my teen youth, and I'm supposed to be 75 or whatever, you know.
And I mean,
brilliant.
You know, she gets real here, Mandy. She says she skipped an age from 11 to 13. She says I was 11, 12, and I was 18. She says not right, you know, missed out a chunk of years. And again, this is like some heavy stuff that she's saying. This could just be said on Parky or, you know, whatever, like a proper chat show. But again, Mrs. Merton doesn't allow it to get too moribund. She says, you know, one day you were playing My Little Pony, the next day you were playing My Little Pony with Bill Wyman.
Yeah, I mean, I wondered where that joke was going to go.
Yeah,
and she didn't go where my, shall we say, more filthier mind would have gone for the gag. She went with, I'm just going to add Bill Wyman in there, which again is very clean, very gentle, but very, very funny.
No, for sure. And like, again, not to be too graphic, but it's like My Little Pony leads it up to the imagination. There's probably a few things, you know, that are very obvious there, but there's a few things you can take from it. But yeah, and she says that, you know, Mrs. Merton says that her friend of 60 married a man of 87, talking of age differences, and they had 2 very happy months together. So.
Yeah. I mean, just just so simple.
Yeah,
again, these,
super simple.
if you look at the jokes, and this sort of permeates all of her work, as well as that there's no sort of complicated setup, there's no big running thing. It's very much like, here's a premise, I'm gonna slightly take you down that way, but we're going that way instead.
Yeah,
you know?
oh no, for sure. The rug's pulled and it's great. And just the last thing on the Bill Wyman thing as well, which is really odd. Merton does bring up that basically her mother and Bill Wyman's son were also in a long-term relationship.
Oh yeah, so Mandy Smith's mum was in a relationship with Bill Wyman's son?
Yeah. It's a sordid saga.
So does that... I haven't even worked out that family tree, but is that like sister, mother, uncle, wife?
It's
like how does that work?
Yeah. Only the darkest Rolling Stone song would even touch on such sexual depravity.
Yeah.
And it's funny actually. There's lots of footage of like their wedding on YouTube. It's like a whole 20-minute uncut thing, and it's great to see the Rolling Stones drummer Charlie Watts is clearly like pissed off and doesn't like it, and like doesn't really talk to anyone, and like, you know, and it's like, I don't know. Bill Wyman also has that sort of pedophile mullet as well. It just makes it worse.
Classic. Yeah, classic.
Like
classic.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's hair was kind of bad then, but yeah, and then you know, we mentioned a little bit about religion. She mentioned Saint Anthony being a patron saint that she prays to, patron saint of lost articles. Mrs. Merton saying, "Oh, should be patron saint of Labour Party."
Yeah. I mean, again, what a brilliant way. And again, there's such a deft, considering she was, you know, sort of a stand-up but essentially a comedy writer. What a brilliant piece of hosting, presenting skill to include Ken back into that part, you know, just to bring him back in again.
She's so skilled at that, and I think it's probably my funniest moment of the episode is just after this with Ken again. Amazing callback, as essentially a question says, like, you know, how trim Mandy is, and does she have like a hot session in the gym, which is like it's like almost overly lurid as a question. It's like, you know, there's no real like innuendo to be gleaned from that. It's just, okay, sure, hot session. And then she clowns a bit on Ken, and he says that he goes swimming 3 times a week. And she says, "Oh, is it with the newts?"
Newts. I've got that. That's literally my top line in my book. Listeners, you can't see this, but I'm showing Tom the top line in my book, and it says "swimming with newts." Great callback. I mean, just absolute, just on fire, so quick, you know, just absolutely
super absurd as well. Like, just great image.
Yeah. Yeah, again, just an offhanded comment. Not really, if you break it down and analyze it, there's nothing to it. There's no great comedy mechanism there, but... Oh.
Jeff, have you got a question?
Being very trim, do you have a hot session at the gym very often?
Saucy, isn't it?
Definitely. Yes, I do. I go when I can, when I'm not working, which is like every other day. I try and get to the gym.
How come they didn't ask you that question, Ken?
Well,
Do you wonder?
I go swimming 3 times a week. So
Do you? With the newts?
It's mad though, isn't it? A callback. Even when you're just having conversation with friends or something and you reference something that they said an hour ago and you just tie it into what you're saying, it can be super funny. Like, and it doesn't, you're right, it like on the face of it, it's a little bit absurd. But because he of his own volition has mentioned the newts and it's stuck in the brain and he hadn't said anything for a little while and just straight away, she just says newts there. And I love that moment. Hey everyone, just a quick intermission to remind you that The Grapes Tapes is now available exclusively on Patreon. This is my deep dive into the classic sitcom Early Doors, written by and starring Craig Cash and Phil Mealy. So if you're enjoying the Raw Ramble and you want to hear my thoughts on that classic show Early Doors, check out The Grapes Tapes. Link in the description. Our next guest, a posh lady from London, and I pride myself, John, on my cultural history of the UK, shall we say. I don't know every author or every person, of course, I'm always trying to learn things. But I've not heard of Drusilla Norman Bufus. Were you familiar with her at all?
Not at all.
No. She is a British etiquette writer. So, in fact, she was born in 1927, so she is approaching 100 years old, which is insane. She has been around since, like, the 50s. She was like a columnist for the Daily Express. There's loads of cool images of her, like properly like, you know, swinging 60s era. And there's one image, I'm just looking at her now. It's her lighting a cigarette with a little crop bob, and she's lighting it off a clothing ration book. So it's just, But
your search history is not going to worry anyone, is it really? You've got the most British benign search
famous
history
British people, 1940. Yeah. That's all
British
I want to know.
decorum, 19th century.
So she published books from 1968 to 1994, and these are kind of like Modern Manners, Party, The Done Thing was what her series was called. She has Business, The Done Thing, Sex, The Done Thing, and, you know, even 1968, the book that kind of made her name, The English Marriage and stuff like that. But, you know, it doesn't have to just be big movie stars or whatnot or kind of controversial figures. They set up a lot of great guests in the show that are just, this is probably going to be quite funny to match these two up and to clash them. I quite like her, actually. I think she's game and it's quite a good interview.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting the way that it felt like they'd saved all the sort of the gags and the bits for that particular guest. So they felt more, they obviously had an idea of what she was going to be bringing to the table in terms of, as you say, a background. And so there was, it felt like there was a lot more writer's room going on there. It's like, okay, let's highlight the culture clash. Let's highlight the societal clash, the statuses, you know, very working class, very proper, you know, let's really dig into that, because there's been gold mined from that premise for decades.
Oh my God. So. Cultures clashing. I mean, that just is comedy, right? That's just kind of, you know. But yeah, it's she asks a lot of obvious, funny questions. Basically, who's the most impolite person you've met? Shall we say, for argument's sake, Fergie? It's just like,
which is an incredible of its time reference.
Yo, again, for sure.
Like, you know, when she said Fergie, my first thought was Alex Ferguson. Yeah. And then I went, no, it's not Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas. Oh, hang on, it's Sarah Ferguson.
Ferguson.
Okay,
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, she was very hot then. She would be in Friends in a few years. You know, she was definitely having a bit of a crossover moment. But yeah,
and Andrew was in a Pizza Express.
He
obviously.
The cameos were all over the place.
Yeah, he's there a few years later. He's in a Pizza Express, not sweating.
But like all old people, Mrs. Merton is obsessed with the royal family. So, you know, we get the Fergie mention before. There's lots of like, you know, my friend, basically. She says, my husband, my friend. And I like when, I think she gets to the third or fourth one, she's like, my friend, but different from the other friends just been telling you about, which is so nanny. Like, I can't, like, only a nan would clarify that. You would just assume it was a different friend. And it doesn't matter if it's the same friend, but it's just, she's just saying it for what's saying. And yeah, so what is it? It's Prince Charles is going to visit basically where she works. She's going to show him to the, quote, nutters, which gets a laugh. Again, this is much you can just say, like old people can just say, sort of, you know, even then probably a bit questionable, but definitely now. And mentions Charles's big jug ears.
Jug ears. Yeah.
Which...
Just brilliant. I wrote those two down as well, you know, because, you know, the big jug ears for Prince Charles, which is brilliant and obviously slightly obvious. But the whole sort of thing, as you say, like nutters. And you're like, well, these are, you know, in 2025, there's lots of things that you can and can't say, and things will take you to task for lots of things. And I think that it's interesting that that's, but you know, it's not offensive, I don't think, but it's borderline.
No, but it's
borderline.
Slightly...
It's delving in there. But I just thought, again, to diffuse the situation, to diffuse the formality of, like, I've got this question. She slips in big jug ears, nutters, you know, all these sort of colloquialisms or things, mannerisms, just to puncture the pomposity of the situation, you know.
I don't want to get too lavatorial with you at this stage, Drusilla, but a man I know, and I don't want to mention his name because he'd only get embarrassed, but ever since we've been married, he leaves the toilet seat up, you know, after he's been to the toilet. Now, is this good or bad manners, do you think, Drusilla?
It's perfectly good manners to leave the toilet seat up, but I think the great thing is to make sure that you leave it as you found it.
The thing is, Drusilla, his aim's not what it used to be. You know, I mean, that's not etiquette, is it? In
certain circumstances, I'm sure you'll agree with me, it could be.
I mean, I don't think she went there, Drusilla, thinking they were going to talk about dinner fork configurations and stuff like that, you know. But it's, again, in these episodes, it's often the third interview that's a little squished. So this is just like a 3-4 minute one. It's not too detailed. They don't really speak about Drusilla or her work, really. Which, again, I'm talking about it as if this is a real interview show. It's not meant to be for that. But that's definitely something they could have spoken about. And almost, you feel like Drusilla's not familiar to us, but she would be familiar to what would be the Mrs. Merton Show audience, right? Like, literally there, but also just people who watch it, people who know these etiquette manuals and these kind of similar dusty tomes to like Delia Smith and stuff like that. So we then get onto our final guest here, and I do like as well, Mrs. Merton says great acting's not easy. John Gielgud or any of those other blokes will tell you that. And this is where my British cultural history training comes into play, because I was familiar with him, but obviously he's like, I mean, he did films a lot in his later era, but he was best known as like a, you know, landmark Shakespearean actor, basically an actor of the stage. So again, just a very sort of Mrs. Merton-y reference there to lead us to the man who makes Curly Watts look simple, which is a great introduction, Kevin Kennedy. Now, you grew up in Curly Mania, or at least that was an era. Did you watch Corrie back then? Do you remember Curly?
Yep. 100%. When he came on, I was like, oh my god, yes, that's what he looks like. And then I remembered he had this sort of storyline. One of the big storylines of his tenure on the show was that he had a relationship with this very beautiful barmaid called Raquel, but she was very dense as well. Played by Sarah Lancashire,
amazing
who went on
actress.
To do Happy Valley and all of that stuff. He worked with, he was part of like the comedic aspect of the show. He worked in a supermarket with another character called Reg Holdsworth as Ken Morley, which she mentions. And they were sort of a double act and things. So I didn't watch it, but I mean, my parents did, so it's all familiar to me.
No, I definitely. I mean, I was born in 92, but my parents watched a lot of soaps growing up, so they were always omnipresent, and I particularly remember Corrie, and I watched some Curly clips as well. There's an amazing clip where the Battersby household is blaring out this, like, drum and bass, and he goes over there and actually pushes through into the house, throws a speaker out the window, all the women, Janet and Toya, are, like, screaming, goes outside, Les Battersby nuts him as well, which is crazy. But
Classic.
I definitely remember Curly being in the show, and I definitely remember him being one of the most, he is one of the most memorable characters, really, because he is this kind of endearing goofball that was on there for 2 decades. He was over 1,500 episodes. And, he had a brief hiatus from the show with his band, The Bunch of Thieves, Kevin Kennedy, who released a single, Bulldog Nation, which peaked at number 70 on the UK single chart.
Wow.
But, again, a bit like Drusilla, a soap star is like an Oscar-winning leading man, so it kind of makes sense that he would come on the show.
Yeah. I mean, the context of of as you say, of the interview. Like normally these kind of things, people go on, they've got something to promote. They're on a press junket, they're going to do something. I don't think. I mean, they barely mentioned. Nothing was happening. So it was literally, I think, partly again familiarity. It's Manchester. It's a soap set in Manchester. There's that. But also, I think. Obviously, they knew he'd be game for a laugh. The fact that she called him Curly all the way through the interview. Not Kevin. It was always Curly. I just thought that was so funny every time she did. And he was having, by the looks of it, a brilliant time. He was just loving it. And I think it was really, really, really fun to sort of bring on, as you say, like this actor and whatever, but just to gently deflate him. Just like there's no ego here. You're not Kevin Kennedy, the actor, or as we discover, a guitarist and singer. You're just Curly. She's gonna poke you with that,
He mentions being a City fan, and she says, "Oh, you're a loser in real life as well."
Yeah.
Damn.
Again, so quick.
And also, did you ever think you'd be in people's homes 3 times a week looking a gormless fool? It's blunt. I do appreciate that. But yeah, he understands his role in the show and also his role as, he's a very recognizable tall guy called Curly, I should say, if people aren't familiar with what this guy looks like. There's a lot of people listening right now that have no idea who Curly is from Glen Street. But he has quite floppy hair, so he's kind of ironically named
His
Curly.
trademark was these essentially, and he wears them in real life, but he's got glasses, but they're those lenses that sort of make your eyes look like they're in goldfish bowls.
Yes.
And I think that added to the sort of the gormless nature of the character, if you like.
So he does sing a song.
He does.
I remember watching this last week. I was like, huh? What is happening? Why is he strumming a guitar right now and doing like an old country song?
But now that you've said that he had a career, when did he take a break? Do you know?
That would have been it would have been after this, much after this. The single would have came out like 5 years. Yeah.
So maybe it's just that. But honestly, I had the same thing. I was like, oh no, he's pulling out a guitar. What is this? And then he started singing. I was like, hey,
no, he's all right.
Got a voice.
Yeah, no,
like it was pretty decent. Now that I know that he's got a band, I'm going to be heading over to Spotify when we're done to see if I can dig that out.
Oh my god.
Thank you very much.
It's a country song, Nick.
Country.
Well, I knew I couldn't hold you.
Like it,
Once
Gene.
you'd heard that highway call your name.
Oh.
Darling, I'll be thinking of you. If your heart should ever roll this way again. Everybody's got a road to follow, trying to find a place where they fit in.
Ada.
I'm here today, and I'll be here tomorrow.
It's a slow bit. It's a slow end bit.
If your heart should ever roll this way.
I hope he has an instrumental cover of the Coronation Street theme as well. That would be great. Just a little.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Like sort of one of those real sort of dirty country things with slide guitars,
Maybe maybe Hooky and the boys could back him up on that one. I think that'd be good. So I don't quite know why he does this. I guess it is a novelty to see, and the guitar gets mentioned, and maybe it was a soft launch for his band and stuff like that. But yeah, it's it's a bit of bar blues basically, talking about if your heart should ever roll this way and this sort of thing. But what's nice is it's not like he plays a song and it goes, dim on set and we just focus on him on the spotlight. He's playing and Mrs. Martin is talking the whole way through, basically. She goes, Ada, it's good, ain't it? Like, she talks over it. And then she also it's a slow bit now. It's a slow bit. Like,
it's slowing down.
Yeah, I love
it's the
that.
end.
Oh yeah, it's and then she speaks to someone else as well, and she goes, "Do you like it, Gene?" Like, it's really, it's like Altman-esque the way it's so conversational, it's so freewheeling this dialogue, like, and I think they knew that, and I think obviously Curly appreciates. I'm calling him Curly now. Obviously Kevin Kennedy appreciates as well, but they can't just have him sing a song and we all be quiet. It has to be something there.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe there was. I wonder if he was sort of familiar with it, because obviously she was initially
she'd been
sort
on
of
radio and
because she had a whole stint on radio in Manchester. So I wonder, and I know that the Mrs. Merton character started off on radio, right? So I wonder if he was sort of slightly knowing about it and just sort of went with it.
Well, yeah, and I think he was deeply involved in the Manchester scene to a certain extent, because he was in a band with Johnny Marr before the Smiths.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've done your research, Tom. You never fail to impress me. I should know this of you by now.
To be fair, that's just on the Wikipedia, so it's not it's not too much of a deal.
So, like, top link on Google.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, AI wrote it, so it's probably wrong, but but no, the Paris Valentinos with Andy Rourke as well, who played bass in the Smiths.
Wow.
So yeah, he played on We Will Rock You as well in 2009. He was part of the touring production of that. So he's
Kevin Kennedy.
Kevin Kennedy was, yeah.
No.
He played
playing what?
He played Pop, the aging hippie.
Hang on. Sorry, I thought you meant he's in the band. He was in the show.
Yeah, he's in the show.
This is this is a wormhole that tomorrow morning I'm doing no work. I am on a Kevin Kennedy rampage on the internet. This is fantastic.
He plays a circuit of musicals I didn't know existed, but it makes sense. He plays the cruise liner musical circuit. He plays the Anthem of the Seas for RCI, and he does We Will Rock You, and Pop is his role apparently. So, but yeah, he's an interesting guy. He's been Holby a few episodes, Mrs. Brown's Boys once, but it seems like he did 1,563 Corrie episodes and just said,
yeah.
I'm gonna go.
And also, it was such a recognizable character.
Yeah.
That I think I don't know, but he probably find it difficult afterwards, because if you stick him in Mrs. Brown's Boys, for example, it's only people are only going to recognize him as, oh, it's Curly.
Yeah.
He's not Kevin. He's not De Niro shaping into different characters and things.
No. So and then we end. We've got 5 minutes left of the show. And we end with something they would do more and more as the program would go on, with the audience interaction, basically. And, war, what is it good for, she asks. And it's set up at, like, talking about, the negatives of war, and she's about the bridge over the River Kwai and stuff like that. But it's actually a debate about fond memories from the war. So it's not really a debate. It's just about what do people remember from the war. And obviously this is the war, or wars, are such a fertile thing for the elderly, right? It's just, obviously as our generations above us get older and older, and like they're less kind of war heroes. It's kind of World War I sort of done now, I guess, for the most part. But what did you think of this section?
Well, so the first thing was when she said, let's have a heated debate. Some core memory in my brain went bing, and I completely forgotten about that. And I think clearly we must have watched this at some point in school and things, because I remember that phrase always happening when someone was having an argument, and somebody would just insert it there to try and break down, sort of like chill out. So let's have a heated debate. I just, oh my God, that was such a memory. But I thought the bit that she had with Roy, so that was the one I referenced earlier. Was magnificent. If you go back and watch that again, you just watch her mouth as he's going on and he's saying all this really weird, abstract stuff.
Shrapnel on toast and all that.
Yeah, shrapnel. She's holding that laugh in.
I know, remember. Roy, the bouncing bombs. Do you remember them?
Oh, I did. I had plenty of them in my pram. Yeah, I did, yeah.
Invented, of course, by Barnes Wallis.
Oh, I know Barnes Wallis very well.
Do you? I bet you do.
I had a good time in my pram during the war.
Did you?
Yeah, because I used to get carried about. And one particular time, they put a German swastika on my pram. And I just remembered that I didn't get bombed because they treated me like Luftwaffe friendly.
She's very. Watch her face. She's letting it go. She's not interrupting. She's not goading because she knows this is absolute gold. Because she always I believe, found the humor in just ordinary conversation, in ordinary people. That's what the royal family essentially is,
indeed.
the show, right? It's just
Indeed.
an ordinary family sitting together, and she just lets him go. You'd never get that now, on Colbert or what's the other one, Fallon, and all that
Oh
sort of
no,
stuff.
none of that.
It's all
No.
very tight. So Roy's there, shrapnel on toast and bombs, and she just lets him go. And then to follow that up with World War One or World War Two, what's your favourite? Just like the brass neck of the woman.
Yeah. And the Roy stuff as well. His pram being marked as Luftwaffe friendly, and it's all like. Sometimes it feels like it's blathering a bit too much, but it always ends strongly. Like it always kind of, it's well edited as well. And not only do we have the elderly giving their opinion, we also have a German man here in the audience.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, this doesn't really make any difference, I suppose. But like, for your listeners, I am Welsh, but I do live in Germany. My wife is half German. My daughter's a quarter German, I guess, because she's
Right.
Anyway, so when that happened, part of me sort of went, "Oh, where's this going to go?" Because I'm sort of slightly sensitive to the traditional jokes about war and the krauts and all of that stuff. But it was brilliant when she was just like, and what do you think? And he was so like, clearly he'd just been. I don't know how they got him there. I suspect he was someone's boyfriend, somebody on the crew or whatever, because he looked so confused as to what was going on and what he was being asked.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so brilliant, because instead of just, making some sort of dig or making some sort of, joke about, you're German, you must be a Nazi or whatever. She just was so gentle, and what about with your friends and where you've, and that
Well,
sort of
she
thing.
says
It was very
war or
good.
peace. What do you think?
Yeah, just like, what a softball question, what a dumb question, but so funny, because I can imagine if he'd have gone, obviously, war, it just.
Well, he says
Brilliant.
peace, and she does say, "You're not just saying that, are you? When you're back home with your mates, you're not going to follow Hitler, are you?"
Yeah, which is, I mean, even at the time was a stupid thing to say, but I mean,
Yeah.
even now, 30 years on, you're like, that was just like, because, I don't know.
Well,
It was just, it was.
canonically then. If Mrs. Merton, I think we discussed this on the show before. I think she's like about 60 odd. I'd say she's like in her 60s. So if this is 94, 95, so I guess she'd be born in 35. So she would have been a war baby, I guess, or a war child.
Yes.
So she's not too elderly. Like Ada, for example, like who's in like her 80s, and Bernard, they actually would have experienced the war,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But it's just trying to place the mythology. And she mentions her husband as well here, who I mentioned before. What's interesting is in the sitcom, John, her husband, you never actually see him. He's like a crumpled heap on the bed, and he doesn't like really move. Like it's quite a dark character. It's an interesting character. But she talks about him like missing the bowl and stuff like that. So it's like he's changed since then, which is something I noted. But and we close with Bernard, who's a veteran of both world wars. We hear Mrs. Merton saw him earlier having a tiff with the floor manager, so she wonders if all the wars were his fault, which I like.
Yeah, and again, that was so fascinating, because that clearly was a piece of real. That was real. There was something that referenced something that we didn't see.
Yeah.
It was off camera, and again, the sense of what she's done throughout the whole episode is just weave this narrative of believability and real life under the subtext, or alongside the subtext of, this is a fictional character. The weaving of the two things of like, this is an actor, a character, but I'm going to pull these real life things in, is just a testament to her genius, I think.
No, absolutely. And, it's a packed half hour, as they always are. There's essentially 5 segments with the 4 guests in the final segment, and then there's kind of the intro as well. But it ends essentially, she says, there's Bernard still shell-shocked as she leaves him, just going on. Because they talk about like the football game in No Man's Land. And
who brought the ball?
Who brought the ball? Which is a good question.
Yeah.
I need
Who
to
goes
look
to
that
war with a football? Yeah.
I guess they could have, like, I don't know, got something together in their rations. But so and then, as I say, it ends with the old Pontins hand swipe and a nice full band version. And what did you think then overall, going back to watch this episode of February 95 Arcana?
Well, I did a quick look, and it was shown twice. So it was shown initially on a Thursday evening at 7:30, which would have been the mainstream one. But I think the times that I would have watched it, it was shown again at 11:15 on a Friday night,
Yes.
which in 1995 would have been post pub time for me.
That was that was such a thing in the 90s, right? Post pub viewing, like.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was very underage, and I won't name those establishments, but
Right.
yeah. So so yeah, it was that and the word and all sorts of things. It was great. I mean, I felt sort of down a rabbit hole. I didn't watch any more of the series because I thought actually I think I'll go back and watch from the beginning. It made me want to actually properly watch the royal family because
Well, I was going to ask actually. Because we share a Metallica love.
yeah.
What about the royal family?
So the thing is that I guess by osmosis, when I think back to the 90s, I think, yeah, I know that. But if you ask me, did you watch it? I go, I don't think so. But it's just so ubiquitous. The royal family felt so ubiquitous, and so I guess for me, it feels like it did for the 90s what The Office did later on, which was take a sense of realism and strip away the laugh track and strip away the Terry and June, the good life stuff of it, and make it real, but still very funny. So I think it definitely made me want to go back and watch it. I feel like I've seen tons of the royal family. Like the documentary I watched about it, it had clips in there, and the scene. Or are we doing spoilers? I don't know. The scene in the bathroom with Jim and when she's worrying about.
You can't do spoilers for a show from 1998. Like, it's all good.
I don't, dude. I don't know. I mean, there are
everyone's listened to them. And look, if you need a good companion podcast on your rewatch,
I hear there is an excellent one around. Yeah,
it's the only one
and and there's that scene in the bathroom when she's worrying about whether she's going to be a good.
the Christmas. Yeah, oh my god.
Yeah, and I was like, I feel I've seen, and the Queen of Sheba bits, I've seen those as well. So it feels like I've seen them already, but it does make me want to go actually go back and actually watch them properly. And certainly off the back of this, I went and I watched that documentary on the BBC,
It's terrific,
the Queen of Comedy. And it was really, I find it obviously really moving. But I also, for me as well, it also actually made me, I felt like there was a sort of a more personal connection there because I didn't know that she had a brother who had cancer.
Yeah.
And she also had it, but they managed to correct it. And it turns out they had the same cancer that I had. So I have an artificial right eye. I had retinoblastoma as well, which is a cancer of the retina. So we had the same condition. So then I immediately started thinking, well, I love the style of comedy she does, that gentle human comedy, all rooted in reality and the humor in everyday modern life. And then to know that, well, we shared an experience of having this condition. I lived through it. She was lucky enough not to. So it was really sort of nostalgic and comforting in a way that made me think I actually probably didn't watch much of this at the time. So I'm definitely going to go back and check it out now.
No, I mean, you should. And the next episode that we are covering is Gilly Goulden, who, again, not very an English wine critic.
Yes, I know her.
Cynthia Payne, who was widely considered Britain's best-known madam, that being a brothel keeper. So that should be interesting. Arthur Tomlinson, who is a UFO expert, which is actually put in brackets on his description because, And then, a victim of Operation U-Tree, Dave Lee Travis.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's the difficulty in going back to these things from the 90s as well. It's like,
the worst. Obviously, I don't know his history too well, but he was a serial offender. But one of the crimes happened at the Mrs. Merton show when he filmed it. I know.
That's going to be a tough episode. That's going to be a tough episode for you to watch, but also that's going to be a tough podcast for you to navigate.
Well, I mean, like Merton herself, I'll try a light touch in the face of tragedy.
Maybe put on a Manchester accent when you do it. Everything sounds better if you sound like a Manc. It's fine.
So, finally, then, John, is there anything you'd like to point people towards?
Not really. Just listen to, if you like the sound of Tom and I waffling on about things, Alpha Metallica. I'll always plug that. That was some great stuff.
Oh, no. They're all out there. So I've not really mentioned, but yes, I mean, Chasing Light we did. We reviewed S1.E2.
We did.
You know, we did
We did one of the Lulu songs.
Yes,
Dragon.
I think it was. Yes, it was Dragon. Did we do Better Than You or?
Yeah, no. We did Carpe Diem.
Carpe Diem, baby. Oh my god.
We did the Metallica quiz.
Oh, we did that. Oh my god, the only episode of a short-lived Metallica quiz show.
Yeah.
So
Playboy interview. That was good fun.
We did do that as well. We did a lot.
And we started doing, I think, did we start doing the So What episodes as well?
Oh, yeah, no. Metallica had their own magazine. Well, they still kind of do, but they definitely was amazing in the 90s.
This is all very inside baseball.
This is already super esoteric being a Mrs. Merton.
You can cut all this out, Tom. This is not good. Your Merton royal family list is not good.
If there is any crossover, check those episodes out there. But just to wrap up then, the rawramblepod@gmail.com. Please get in touch with me there. Email me your thoughts on any of these episodes that we've done, or if indeed you want to come on. I think there's like 40 total Mrs. Merton episodes. There's some specials in there as well. So there's a lot to get through. It's going to be a few years before we finish this. So get in touch with me there if you want to come on. Patreon is also available. We have our Early Doors series over there. Have you seen Early Doors, John? I guess you've not seen the Raw Family, maybe you've not.
No, I know of it though. I've got a friend, not the friend I was mentioning earlier, but a different friend. He quite likes it. Like
what Mrs. Merton, you got to specify the friend. That's very important. But yeah, I mean, you probably know it's like the Raw Family in a pub, basically. But I would highly recommend it, and I would then highly recommend you subscribe to the Patreon to get access to my exclusive series going through every episode in detail. So that is available there as well. We're on TikTok. We're posting quite a lot over on there. I'll put the links down below. YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, all those stuff. So this has been a really enjoyable jaunt again for an old episode of Mrs. Merton, an episode that is just crossed actually the 20-year mark last month. It's 20 years old. This is so definitely an old look back there. But John,
less of the old. Come on now.
It's 2 decades. It was It's wild that I was 2, but. It's,
I was 15.
That's crazy. That is, but, through this generation gap, we've
look at us. Look
over
at
Mrs.
us.
Merton and Metallica. So
who'd have thought it?
So, again, guys, appreciate you listening to this. Go back through and listen to the old Mrs. Merton episodes, especially. So we've got the episode with Fergal where we do the pilot, and then we've got my own episode where I do all the pre-history and all the Caroline Aherne history. So, John, thanks again. This has been great.
Cheers, man.
Tom Quee presents The Royal Ramble, an episode-by-episode celebration of the classic British sitcom, The Royal Family. To get in touch with the show, email us at theroyalramblepod@gmail.com.